The first thing the detective asked me was why my signature was on a wire transfer for $3,840,000. The second thing she asked was why my business partner had left his wedding ring in my desk drawer. I had no answer for either one. Owen Price had been my closest friend for 20 years. We had built a company together, raised our children side by side, and signed more contracts than I could count across the same scarred conference table. Then, 7 days before the biggest sale of our lives, he vanished. So did the money. And on his desk, beneath a cold cup of coffee, he left 6 words that meant nothing to the police. But I knew exactly what they meant. At least, I thought I did. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 59 when this happened, and until that week, I believed I understood the shape of my life. My wife, Laura, and I lived outside Cedar Grove, Ohio.
Is anyone in
there? We had been
there?
married 32 years. Our daughter, Emily, lived 20 minutes away with her husband and our 2 grandsons. Our son, Ben, taught high school history in Columbus and called every Sunday. We were ordinary people. Our mortgage was almost paid off. Laura wanted a new kitchen. I wanted enough time to sit on the porch without checking my phone. The company was Mercer & Price Commercial Restoration. Owen and I started it in 2006 with 1 dented pickup, 2 ladders, and a rented garage that leaked whenever it rained. We repaired storm damage, restored old buildings, and took the jobs larger firms considered too troublesome. By our 20th year, we employed 86 people across 3 counties. Then, North Star Facilities Group offered to buy us for $18 million. After debts, taxes, and employee bonuses, Owen and I would each have enough to retire comfortably. I was ready. Laura's arthritis had worsened. My mother was 84 and needed more help. I had missed too many birthdays and Sunday dinners because a roof collapsed or a pipe burst somewhere. Owen said he was ready too. The closing was scheduled for Friday, October 18. On Monday morning, October 14, Owen did not come to work. That alone was strange. In 20 years, he had missed 3 mornings without calling. Once for kidney stones, once when his mother died, and once when his daughter went into labor early. At 8:15, I texted him. At 8:30, I called. At 9, I called his wife, Denise. She answered on the 4th ring. Daniel, is he with you? That question put a cold knot in my stomach. Owen had left home Sunday evening around 7. He told Denise he needed to review final sale documents at the office. He took his laptop, a gray overnight bag, and the old Navy windbreaker he wore in bad weather. He never came back. By 10, we were checking hospitals. By noon, Denise had called the police. At 1:27, our controller, Martin Hale, walked into my office with no color in his face. Martin had been with us 9 years. He was so careful with numbers that he once delayed payroll because one employee's mileage was off by $6. He shut my door. Daniel, I need you downstairs. There are sentences that sound ordinary until you hear the fear underneath them. That was one. In the finance office, Martin opened our main operating account. The balance should have been over $4 million. That covered payroll, suppliers, cash reserves, and employee closing bonuses. The screen showed $82,106. 3 wires had gone out between 11,048 Sunday night and 2016 Monday morning. All 3 were approved using Owen's credentials. And mine. That's impossible, I said. The authorization record included my digital certificate, my security token, and a timestamped approval from my home internet address. I had been asleep beside my wife. At least, I believed I had. By 3 that afternoon, 2 detectives were in our conference room. North Star suspended the sale. Our bank froze every remaining account. Payroll was due Thursday. News travels fast inside a company, even behind closed doors. Employees whispered in hallways. Project managers asked whether suppliers would be paid. One of our longest-serving foremen stood outside my office as though he wanted reassurance but was afraid to ask. I had none to give him. Detective Carla Ruiz asked to see Owen's office. His coffee was still on the desk, his reading glasses rested on an open folder. A family photograph faced his chair. Nothing looked disturbed. Ruiz opened the drawers while her partner took pictures. That was when she found the note. It was written on the back of a North Star legal pad in Owen's blocky handwriting. Before you tear off the roof, check the west wall. Ruiz read it twice. Does that mean anything to you? My mouth went dry. 20 years earlier, Owen and I had taken one of our first insurance restoration jobs at an abandoned textile warehouse on Bell Street. The roof had partly collapsed after a storm. The owner wanted the insurer to pay for a full replacement. Owen noticed old water stains behind the west wall. We opened it and found years of rot, altered inspection records, and proof the owner had known about the damage long before the storm. That job taught us a rule we repeated whenever something looked obvious. Before you blame the roof, check the west wall. It meant the visible damage was rarely the whole story. But the note was more than advice. The Bell Street warehouse later became our first real office. We kept tools in numbered bays, invoices in metal cabinets, and emergency cash in places no thief would think to search. Owen's message was a location. I told Ruiz about the phrase. I did not tell her everything. I wish I could say it was a calculated decision. It wasn't. 20 years of loyalty rose before suspicion could take its place. Part of me believed Owen was in danger. Part of me believed the money had been moved for some reason I could not see. And part of me, the part I hated most, wondered whether I had ever known him at all. The police sealed his office just before 5. Laura was waiting at our kitchen table when I got home. She had seen the local news alert. It called Owen a missing executive and mentioned financial irregularities connected to the sale. That phrase sounded clean. There was nothing clean about 86 families wondering whether their next paycheck would arrive. Laura reached for my hand. Do you think he took it? I pictured Owen's wedding ring inside an evidence bag. He had worn it every day since 1989. He twisted it whenever he was nervous. I had watched him do it during negotiations, funerals, hospital visits, and the night his first grandchild was born. I don't know, I said. But the truth was worse. I was beginning to think he wanted me to follow him. Before I tell you what I did next, let me pause for 1 second. If this story has pulled you in, subscribe, give it a like, and tap the bell. Now, back to that note. At 11:30 that night, after Laura went upstairs, I took the spare keys from the mudroom cabinet. The Bell Street warehouse had been sold years earlier to a storage company, but the western section still stood. Owen and I drove past it every anniversary of the day we signed our first lease. It was a foolish little tradition that mattered only to the 2 men who remembered being broke there. Rain had started when I reached the building. The security gate was chained, but a pedestrian entrance near the loading dock had a broken latch. I slipped through and crossed the dark lot with my phone flashlight shaking in my hand. The west wall was inside Unit 14, our old records room. The lock was new, but the metal frame was old. Behind a loose section near the floor, Owen and I had hidden a spare key in a plastic tube. It was still there. I stood in the rain holding that key and something inside me cracked. Owen had planned this, maybe days ago, maybe years ago. But he knew I would come. The unit smelled of dust, wet concrete, and old wood. My light moved across broken shelving and rusted filing cabinets. The west wall was covered with plywood. On the 3rd panel, someone had drawn a small black X. I pulled it loose. Behind it sat a sealed gray box. My name was written across the top. Inside were bank statements, a flash drive, 2 photographs, and an envelope. The first photograph showed Owen entering a private bank in Cleveland 3 weeks earlier. The second showed him leaving with a man I recognized immediately, my son-in-law, Evan Cole. I opened the envelope. There was 1 page inside. Owen had written only 7 words. Daniel, the sale was never meant to happen. I read those words 3 times, then I turned the page over, expecting an explanation. There was nothing. Rain tapped against the metal roof above me. Somewhere deeper in the building, water dripped with a slow, hollow rhythm. The sale was never meant to happen. That could have meant Owen had sabotaged it. It could have meant North Star had never intended to honor the deal. Or it could have meant someone close to me had arranged the entire thing for a reason I could not yet understand. I looked again at the photograph of Evan leaving the private bank. My daughter's husband was 41, clean-cut, polite, and dependable, in the way people admired at church dinners and school fundraisers. He owned a small commercial insurance agency in Cedar Grove. He coached my oldest grandson's baseball team. He called me Dad, even though I had never asked him to. I had known him for 17 years, and Owen had met him secretly 3 weeks before disappearing. The flash drive was tucked beneath the bank statements. I pulled my laptop from the truck and carried it back into the unit. The battery was low, and I had no internet connection, but the drive opened without a password. There were 4 folders. North Star, Evan, Daniel, Insurance. Seeing my own name felt like someone had stepped behind me. I opened the folder marked Evan first. It contained scanned documents from a company called Briar Ridge Holdings. According to the state filing, Briar Ridge had been formed 18 months earlier in Delaware. Its owner was hidden behind a registered agent. The bank statements told a clearer story. Over the previous year, Briar Ridge had received payments from 3 subcontractors that worked with Mercer and Price. Payments of $40,000, $75,000, $120,000. The description said consulting fees. I knew those subcontractors. We had hired them for demolition, roofing, and hazardous material removal. None of them had ever mentioned Briar Ridge. The final document was an insurance policy. Evan's agency had issued it. I stared at his signature on the bottom of the page. My fingers went numb. The policy covered business interruption and financial loss for a warehouse development in Lake County. Mercer and Price had restored that property after a fire the previous year. The claim had been one of the largest we had ever handled, $6.2 million. I remembered Owen arguing with Evan about it at Emily's house during Thanksgiving. At the time, I thought they were discussing football. Their voices had risen in the den, then stopped the moment I entered. Owen had smiled and said, "Just teaching your son-in-law how insurance companies think." Evan laughed. Neither man looked amused. I opened the folder marked insurance. That was when the first real shape of the betrayal appeared. The Lake County fire had been ruled accidental. An electrical fault in an old loading system. But Owen had collected inspection photographs, invoices, and email chains showing the equipment had been replaced 6 months before the fire. The supposed electrical fault could not have come from machinery that was no longer installed. Someone had submitted old maintenance records to the insurance company. Someone had used Mercer and Price reports to support the claim, and someone had altered Owen's electronic signature on 2 documents. I felt sick. If those reports were fraudulent, our company could lose its license. North Star could walk away, insurers could sue us, federal investigators could freeze everything we owned. The vanished money was not the beginning of the crime. It was the smoke coming from something that had been burning for a long time. I finally opened the folder with my name. There were screenshots of access logs from the company network. My credentials had been used after midnight on 7 separate occasions. Always from my home internet address. Always when I was asleep. The first date was 11 months earlier. I checked my phone calendar. Laura and I had hosted Emily's family that night. Evan stayed late to help me set up a new television in the basement. He had access to my home. He knew where I kept my work laptop, and he had once helped me reset the router password. I closed my eyes. There are moments when your mind tries to protect you by offering simpler explanations. Maybe Owen was wrong, maybe the records were incomplete, maybe Evan had a reasonable excuse. But then I remembered a small detail. 6 months earlier, Evan had given me a new security token for my birthday. Not as a gift exactly. He said his agency had upgraded its login system and had spare encrypted key devices. He told me mine was outdated. I thanked him. I used it every day. The token the bank said had authorized the missing transfers. My phone rang so suddenly that I nearly dropped it. Laura. "Where are you?" she asked. I looked at the gray box. Couldn't sleep. I went for a drive. At midnight, I needed air. There was a pause. She knew me too well to believe that. "Daniel," the police called. My chest tightened. What did they say? They found Owen's car. It was parked at a rest area off Interstate 71, 50 miles south of Cedar Grove. The driver's door was unlocked. His phone was on the floor. His wallet was in the center console. There was blood on the steering wheel. Not much. But enough for the detectives to treat the disappearance as something more than theft. I told Laura I was coming home. Then I gathered every document and put the gray box in my truck. I did not call Detective Ruiz. Not yet. That decision still troubles me. But the evidence pointed at my son-in-law, and before I destroyed my daughter's life, I needed to know whether Owen had been investigating Evan or working with him. I reached home just after 1. Laura stood in the kitchen wearing her robe, arms folded tightly against herself. "You lied to me," she said. "I know. Where were you?" I placed the gray box on the table. Her anger faded when she saw my face. I showed her the photographs first. She sat down slowly. "No," she whispered. I handed her the insurance policy. She studied Evan's signature, then looked at me. "Emily can't know about this until we're certain." "I agree. You need to call the detective." "I will. Now, Daniel." I looked toward the dark hallway as though someone might be listening from the stairs. Owen left this for me, not the police. Me. "And now there's blood in his car. I understand that." "Do you?" Her voice cracked. Laura had loved Owen like a brother. He had driven her to the hospital when Emily was born because I was stuck 2 counties away during an ice storm. He stood beside me when I buried my father. He and Denise spent nearly every Christmas Eve in our living room. The missing money hurt. The possibility that Owen was injured frightened her more. "I need a few hours," I said, "just until morning." She stared at me with disappointment. That was harder to bear than anger. Finally, she nodded. "One night. Then we tell Ruiz everything." I carried the box into my study and locked the door. I should have slept. Instead, I went through every page until sunrise. At 5:40, I found something hidden in the North Star folder. A draft purchase agreement dated 4 months before the official offer. The buyer was not North Star Facilities Group. It was Briar Ridge Holdings. Evan's hidden company had tried to buy Mercer and Price first. The purchase price was $9 million, exactly half of what North Star later offered. Owen's name appeared as the seller's representative. Mine did not appear anywhere. I sat in my chair while the morning light crept across the carpet. Owen had negotiated a secret sale behind my back. Then North Star arrived with a much larger offer. If Owen had planned to sell to Evan's company for half the value, the North Star deal threatened someone's plan. Maybe that was why he said the sale was never meant to happen. At 7:15, Emily called. I almost let it ring. "Dad," she said when I answered. "Is it true about Uncle Owen?" She had called him that since she was a child. The police found his car. Evan said there was blood. My eyes moved to the locked study door. How does Evan know that? Silence. Then she said, "A friend of his works with the highway patrol. It was possible." It was also too quick. "Is Evan there?" "He left early." "Where did he go?" "To his office, I think." "You think? Dad, what's going on?" I heard fear in her voice, and every instinct in me wanted to protect her. But protecting grown children can become a dangerous habit. Sometimes what we call protection is only delay. "Emily, listen carefully. Take the boys to your mother's house." "What? Do not tell Evan where you're going." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry." "Just trust me." She began to ask another question, but someone spoke in the background. A man's voice. "Evan." Emily said, "I thought you left." My hand tightened around the phone. He answered her, but I could not make out the words. Then he came on the line. "Morning, Dad." His voice was calm. Too calm. "Evan, Emily says you want her to take the boys somewhere. I wanted to see them." "At 7 in the morning?" He gave a small laugh. It sounded practiced. I looked at Owen's photograph on my bookshelf. The two of us stood beside our first company truck, younger men with more confidence than money. "Where were you 3 weeks ago on Thursday?" I asked. The line went quiet. Laura appeared in the doorway. Evan said, "I'd have to check my calendar." "Were you in Cleveland?" Another pause. "Possibly." "I meet clients all over the state. At Calder Private Bank." He stopped breathing for a second. I heard it. Then his tone changed. Not dramatically, just enough. "Dad, I don't know what Owen told you, but he was under a lot of pressure." "What kind of pressure?" "The kind that makes people do reckless things." "Did you meet him at that bank?" Emily said something in the background. Evan ignored her. "You should give whatever he left you to the police," he said. The room seemed to narrow around me. I had not told him Owen left anything. I had not told Emily about the note, the warehouse, or the gray box. Before I could answer, Evan spoke again. "And Daniel." "Don't open the red envelope." The call ended. I stared at the phone. There had been no red envelope in the box, not that I had seen. Laura asked what he said. I did not answer. I crossed the room, unlocked the gray box, and removed every folder. I ran my hands along the inside, pressing the fabric lining. At the bottom, beneath the false cardboard panel, my fingers touched paper. A dark red envelope lay underneath. My name was written on the front. The handwriting was not Owen's. It belonged to my daughter. I knew the slant of every letter. Emily had pressed too hard with the pen, the way she always did when she was frightened. Even as a child, she had left deep grooves in birthday cards and school forms. I opened the envelope carefully. A small brass key was taped inside. Beneath it were 4 handwritten pages. "Dad, if Owen gives you this letter, something has gone very wrong. Please believe me when I say I did not know what Evan was doing. I found out by accident, and I have been terrified to tell you." I stopped reading. The room was warm, but my hands had gone cold. Laura stood behind my chair. I felt her palm settle on my shoulder. "Keep going," she whispered. 3 weeks earlier, Emily had borrowed Evan's laptop to print permission forms for the boys. A notification appeared from an unfamiliar email account. The message said, "Owen is getting nervous. Keep Daniel focused on North Star." Emily opened it. The account belonged to someone using the initials M.H. Martin Hale, our controller. There were dozens of messages. Most were written in vague business language, but a few mentioned the Lake County fire, Briar Ridge, and original documents that needed to disappear before the sale. One message from Evan said, "Once North Star closes, Daniel and Owen are out. After that, the claims are buried." Another message, sent from Owen's private email address, said, "Daniel trusts me. Leave him alone." Emily took photographs of the screen with her phone. She did not confront Evan. Instead, she called Owen. He asked her to meet him at Calder Private Bank in Cleveland. That explained the photograph. It had not shown Owen and Evan. From a distance, with his dark coat and similar build, I had assumed the man beside Owen was my son-in-law. It was Emily. Owen opened a safe deposit box in her name and gave her the brass key. He told her that if anything happened to him, she was to write everything down, seal it in a red envelope, and give it to him. He promised he would get it to me. Then came the sentence that made me push away from the desk. Owen said you were never supposed to see the Briar Ridge contract because your signature was already on it. Laura leaned closer. What does that mean? I continued. Emily wrote that she had seen a scanned copy on Evan's laptop. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, not copied, not pasted. Signed in blue ink. The document transferred my ownership stake in Mercer and Price to Briar Ridge Holdings if the North Star sale failed for any reason connected to fraud, criminal investigation, or undisclosed liabilities. In other words, if the company became tainted before closing, Briar Ridge could take control for $9 million, half its real value. And according to the contract, I had agreed to it. I never signed that, I said. Laura moved around the desk and sat opposite me. Are you certain? I looked at her. What kind of question is that? The kind I have to ask. I would remember signing away my company. You sign documents every week. Not that one. She lowered her eyes. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, last winter, when you had your shoulder surgery, Owen brought papers to the house. I remembered the surgery. I also remembered very little from the first 2 days afterward. Pain medication had left entire stretches of time blurred. Owen said they were year-end insurance renewals, Laura continued. You signed them in bed. My stomach tightened. How many? I don't know. 6 or 7. Was Evan there? She nodded slowly. He brought dinner. I turned back to the letter. Emily's final page had been written more quickly than the others. The line slanted downward. Dad, Evan knows I copied the messages. He says Owen is manipulating me and that you are involved too. He says all 3 of you agreed to the Briar Ridge deal last year, and now Owen is trying to save himself. I don't know who is telling the truth. The key opens box 614 at Calder Private Bank. Owen placed something inside it. He said it would explain why the first fire mattered more than the second one. Please do not confront Evan alone. I love you. Emily. At the bottom of the page, beneath her name, someone had written one additional sentence in black ink. Ask Daniel where he was on March 9, 2006. That handwriting did not belong to Emily. It did not belong to Owen either. I knew the date. March 9, 2006, was the night the Bell Street warehouse caught fire, the building that later became our first office, the place where Owen had hidden the gray box. According to the official report, a space heater caused the fire. Owen and I were hired to repair the damage. The owner could not pay his deductible and offered us cheap rent instead. That accident had launched our company. Without that fire, Mercer and Price might never have existed. Laura studied my face. Where were you? At home. With me. We had been married 12 years then. Emily was 8, Ben was 5. I tried to picture that night. Our old house, the small kitchen, children asleep upstairs. But the memory would not form. I must have been. You don't remember. It was 20 years ago. Laura took the letter from me and examined the unfamiliar sentence. Who added this? A car door slammed outside. Both of us froze. Headlights moved across the study window. I stood, crossed the room, and looked through the blinds. Emily's minivan was parked crooked in the driveway. She climbed out carrying a duffel bag. The boys were with her, still wearing pajama pants beneath their winter coats. Laura hurried to open the front door. Emily entered with tears on her face. The moment she saw the red envelope on my desk, she stopped. You found it. I held up the letter. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. When? Sunday afternoon. I called twice. I checked my phone. There were no missed calls from her. Emily unlocked hers and showed me the call log. 2 outgoing calls to my number. Both lasted less than 10 seconds. I had never received them. Evan controls our family phone plan, she said. He told me the calls didn't connect. My oldest grandson, Caleb, stood in the hallway gripping his backpack. He was 14, old enough to understand that something was wrong and young enough to believe the adults would fix it. Laura led both boys upstairs. When they were gone, Emily sat down. Evan took my phone last night, she said. He gave it back before bed, but something was different. My photos of his laptop were gone. Did he threaten you? Not directly. What did he say? That families survive when everyone protects the same secret. A pulse began beating behind my eyes. Emily looked at the brass key. Did Owen leave anything else? A flash drive. Bank records. Photographs. Did he leave the recorder? What recorder? She covered her mouth. Then she told me. At Calder Bank, Owen had placed a small digital recorder inside box 614. He said it contained a conversation from the previous December, the night of our company Christmas dinner. Owen, Evan, Martin, and one other man had met in the private dining room after everyone left. Owen recorded them without their knowledge. He said the voices would tell you who started this, Emily said. Why didn't he take it to the police? He said one of the people in the room had friends inside the department. That explained why Owen had hidden clues instead of making a report. It also meant Detective Ruiz might not be safe to trust. Before I tell you what we heard on that recording, do me a small favor. Subscribe, tap like, and turn on the bell if you want more stories like this. Alright, here's where everything changed. Calder Private Bank opened at 9. Laura stayed home with the boys. Emily and I drove to Cleveland in silence. Neither of us called the police. At 8:55, we sat across the street watching employees enter through the glass doors. You should have told me, I said. I thought I was protecting you. From what? From knowing that Uncle Owen might have used you. The words hurt because she still called him Uncle Owen. At 9:10, we entered the bank. The manager escorted us downstairs after checking Emily's identification and the key. Box 614 was narrow and deeper than I expected. Inside was a digital recorder, a sealed folder, and an old photograph of the Bell Street warehouse after the fire. 4 men stood in front of the damaged building. Owen, the warehouse owner, a younger Martin Hale, and me. On the back, someone had written March 10, 2006, the morning after we made the deal. My memory gave me nothing. Emily pressed play on the recorder. At first, we heard chairs moving and glasses touching a table. Then Martin's voice. North Star's offer changes nothing. The fallback agreement still gives Briar Ridge control, Evan answered. What if Daniel challenges the signature? A third man spoke. I did not recognize him. He won't get the chance. Once the money disappears, every record points to him. Then Owen's voice filled the small room. Calm. Clear. Painfully familiar. And when Daniel is arrested, he said, the company becomes ours. The recorder clicked, but no one spoke. Then the unknown man laughed. It was a dry, patient sound. The kind of laugh a man gives when he believes the outcome has already been decided. Owen spoke again. And when Daniel is arrested, the company becomes ours. Is that what you're saying? This time, I heard the difference. He was not making a promise. He was repeating the plan back to them. The unknown man answered. Briar Ridge takes control under the fallback agreement. North Star withdraws. The insurers settle quietly. Daniel carries the fraud, and the rest of us move on. Emily gripped the edge of the table. Evan said, what happens to Owen's share? That depends on Owen. A glass touched the tabletop. Martin cleared his throat. We're past the point where anyone can walk away. Owen's chair scraped against the floor. I never agreed to frame Daniel. You agreed 20 years ago. I agreed to keep the company alive. You signed the Bell Street report. So did Martin. Martin's voice sharpened. Careful. The unknown man said, enough. North Star closes on the 18th. The money moves the night before. Daniel's credentials authorize it. By Monday morning, both partners look guilty. Evan asked, and Emily? My daughter flinched beside me. The unknown man paused before answering. She knows what you tell her. She's been asking questions. Then give her better answers. Owen spoke quietly. If anybody touches Daniel's family, I go to the authorities. The man laughed again. You still think you have that option. A door opened on the recording. Footsteps crossed the room. Then the voice came closer to the recorder. You built your company with stolen money, Owen. You and Daniel have lived comfortably for 20 years because the rest of us stayed quiet. Don't start pretending you're innocent now. The door closed. For several seconds, only Owen and Martin remained. I could hear them breathing. Martin finally said, you should have taken the $9 million. Owen replied, you should never have brought Evan into this. He came to me. He's using my partner's daughter. He married her 17 years ago. I'd say he's committed. A chair moved. Then Owen said something so softly I almost missed it. Daniel wasn't there that night. Martin answered immediately. There's a photograph. A photograph can lie. The report has his signature. So do the transfers. Then Martin said, you always were sentimental about him. The recorder stopped. Emily pressed the button again. Nothing happened. That's all? I asked. She checked the device. The file was 48 minutes long, but only the final 4 minutes contained voices. The rest was empty room noise. Owen must have placed the recorder before the meeting and retrieved it after everyone left. I opened the sealed folder from the safe deposit box. Inside were copies of the original Bell Street fire report, a check for $250,000, and a partnership agreement dated March 10, 2006. The check was written to Mercer and Price Restoration. That name should not have existed yet. Owen and I did not register the company until April. The check came from a business called Crane Industrial Properties. The warehouse owner. I looked at the signature, Walter Crane. The man standing beside us in the photograph. The partnership agreement said Owen and I had accepted the money as an advance for emergency restoration services. My signature appeared at the bottom, again. I compared it to the writing on my driver's license. It was nearly perfect. Nearly. Whoever signed it had made the final loop in the M too narrow. Laura used to tease me about that loop. She said my last name looked like it was wearing a hat. The signature on the agreement had no hat. That isn't mine, I said. Emily leaned over it. Can you prove that? I don't know. A folded newspaper clipping fell from the folder. The headline read, Local Warehouse Fire Ruled Accidental. Someone had circled the name of the county fire investigator, Calvin Rhodes. I knew it immediately. Calvin had become North Star's head of risk and compliance 6 years earlier. He was also the man leading the due diligence review of our company's sale. I had sat across from him during 4 meetings. He was in his late 60s now, silver-haired and soft-spoken. He carried peppermints in his coat pocket and asked questions as if he were apologizing for them. I had trusted him because North Star trusted him. He was the unknown voice on the recording. Emily searched his name on her phone. A recent company photograph appeared. The older face was heavier, but the eyes were unchanged. Calvin Rhodes was the 4th man in the Bell Street picture, not Walter Crane. I had mistaken him for the warehouse owner because the caption on the back told me what to see. Then who took the photograph? Emily asked. I looked at the empty space behind the camera. Owen. The bank manager knocked on the door. His expression had changed. Mr. Mercer, may I speak with you outside? I followed him into the corridor. 2 uniformed officers stood near the elevator. The manager kept his voice low. We received a legal hold notice on this box 10 minutes ago. The police have asked that nothing be removed. My heart began pounding. Which police? Cedar Grove. One of the officers looked toward us. I stepped back into the viewing room and closed the door. We have to leave. Emily stared at me. The police are outside. Did Detective Ruiz send them? I don't know. The room had no second exit, but there was a service door beside the bank employee's desk. I had noticed a delivery worker use it when we arrived. We returned the metal box to its slot, but I slipped the recorder, the folder, and the photograph inside Emily's duffel bag. The brass key went into my pocket. When we opened the viewing room door, the officers were speaking with the bank manager. Emily walked beside me without looking at them. We reached the service hallway. A voice called my name. Mr. Mercer. I kept moving. The officer called again. Emily pushed the service door open. An alarm sounded. We ran. I had not run in years. My left knee protested with every step, and my lungs burned before we reached the parking garage. Emily unlocked the car while I looked behind us. No one followed. Not immediately. We drove down the ramp and merged into morning traffic. My phone rang. Detective Ruiz. I answered on speaker. Daniel, where are you? Why? Martin Hale was found dead 40 minutes ago. Emily covered her mouth. Ruiz continued. He was in his car behind the company office. Single gunshot wound. I pulled to the side of the road. What does that have to do with me? We found a note in his coat. My throat tightened. What note? It says you discovered the transfers, threatened him, and forced him to help you blame Owen. That's a lie. I need you to come in. Did you send officers to Calder Bank? There was a pause. No. I looked at Emily, then someone else did. Ruiz lowered her voice. Daniel, listen to me. Your registered handgun is missing from the safe in your study. The inside of the car seemed to tilt. Only 3 people knew the combination. Laura, me, and Evan. Ruiz said, the preliminary caliber matches the wound. I closed my eyes. Where is my family? We sent a unit to your house. I called Laura from Emily's phone. No answer. Again, nothing. Emily called Caleb. His phone went directly to voicemail. We turned toward Cedar Grove. The drive should have taken 45 minutes. I made it in 32. A patrol car sat in front of my house, but the front door was open and no officer was visible. I rushed inside. Laura! The living room was empty. The boys' coats were gone. A kitchen chair lay on its side. On the table sat Laura's phone and a fresh cup of coffee. Emily found a folded sheet of paper beneath it. Her face drained of color. What does it say? She handed it to me. The message had been typed. Bring the gray box to Bell Street at noon. Come alone, or your family learns what Daniel did in 2006. At the bottom, someone had added one handwritten line. Before you tear off the roof, check the west wall. This time, the handwriting was mine. I held the note beneath the desk lamp. The handwriting looked like mine because it was mine, not written that morning, copied. The final stroke of the word wall curved upward in a way I had stopped using years ago, after arthritis stiffened my right thumb. Whoever created the message had traced something I wrote when I was younger. Emily stood beside me. Where would they get a sample that old? I looked at the gray box. The warehouse. 20 years earlier, I had labeled walls, tool bays, electrical panels, and storage cabinets in black construction marker. My handwriting had been everywhere. Someone had preserved a photograph or removed a piece of the original wall. The message was designed to frighten me. It was also meant to remind me that whoever controlled this knew the building better than the police did. My phone showed 11:12, 48 minutes until noon. Emily grabbed her coat. You're not going alone. The note says I have to. You think Evan will keep his word? No. Then why obey him? Because your mother and the boys may be there. Her face tightened when I said the boys. I opened the gray box and removed the flash drive, the bank statements, and the insurance documents. I placed them in a canvas tool bag, then filled the bottom with old invoices from my filing cabinet. The real evidence went into a plastic freezer bag. I handed it to Emily. Take this to Detective Ruiz. You said we couldn't trust the department. I don't trust the department. I trust the way Ruiz sounded when she told me about the gun. Emily stared at me. She thinks you killed Martin. She also warned me before she had to. I wrote a short note explaining the Calder recording and Box 617. I included Calvin Rhodes's name, Briar Ridge, and the location of the warehouse. Then I added one final instruction. Do not come through the front gate. Emily read it. What are you planning? I'm trying not to plan too much. Owen used to say complicated plans fail because people insist on following them. You still trust him? That question stayed between us. I trust that he wanted me to find the box. That isn't the same thing. No, I looked toward the staircase. The house was too quiet without Laura and the boys. Go to Ruiz, keep your phone on. If I don't call by 12:30, give her everything. Emily hugged me. She had not done that in years without one of us arriving or leaving for a holiday. Dad, she whispered, what if Evan really believes you were part of this? Then he should have asked me. What if he did all this because he thought he was protecting us? I pulled back and looked at her. Protection doesn't require murder. She nodded, but tears had filled her eyes. I left through the garage. Bell Street sat on the edge of Cedar Grove's old industrial district, where brick factories had become storage units, repair shops, and empty lots choked with weeds. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained low and gray. I parked 2 blocks away behind a closed appliance store and carried the canvas bag the rest of the distance. The pedestrian gate stood open. That frightened me more than a lock would have. Inside Unit 14, the plywood panel I had removed during the night was back in place. The black X was gone. Evan? My voice traveled through the warehouse. No answer. A work light switched on at the far end of the room. It illuminated an old folding table. My missing handgun lay in the center. Beside it sat Laura's wedding ring. I stopped breathing. A speaker somewhere above me crackled. Put the box on the table, Daniel. Calvin Rhodes's voice, not Evan's. I scanned the rafters and dark doorways. Where is my wife? Safe for the moment. And my grandsons. They were never part of this. Then let them go. Set down the box. I walked toward the table. Every step echoed. The handgun had been placed carefully, grip facing me. It was bait. If I touched it, my fingerprints would give Calvin one more piece of evidence. I lowered the canvas bag without going near the weapon. Calvin said, "Open it." I unzipped the bag and showed him the papers. A door opened behind the western wall. Evan stepped out. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair, normally combed into place, hung over his forehead. He looked exhausted. He did not look like a man in control. He looked frightened. Where are they? I asked. Evan's eyes moved toward the ceiling speaker. Laura took the boys to Denise's house. Relief hit me so hard my knees weakened. Why was her phone left behind? She didn't have a choice. Did you force her? No. Then where is she? He looked toward a steel door near the loading bay. She came here. I stared at him. Why? To find Owen. Before I could respond, Calvin's voice cut through the room. Evan, check the box. Evan approached me. I saw a bruise along his jaw. What happened to you? Give me the bag. Did Calvin kill Martin? His eyes flickered. That was answer enough. You knew he would? No, but you helped him frame me. I helped build Briar Ridge, using stolen insurance money. It wasn't supposed to be stolen. I almost laughed. The sound came out bitter. What did you think it was? Settlement money? Consulting fees? Money Martin said had been hidden from Owen and you. You believed that? I believed your company had been built on fraud. He lowered his voice. I thought North Star would expose everything and leave Emily with nothing, so you decided to steal it first. I was trying to protect my family. By sending me to prison? His face twisted. That wasn't my plan. Calvin spoke through the speaker. Stop talking and open the bag. Evan reached for it. I held on. Where is Laura? His voice dropped to a whisper. Behind the west wall. Before I tell you what I found there, take a second to subscribe, leave a like, and turn on the bell. Stories like this always remind me how quickly trust can become a weapon. Evan released the bag. Then, without warning, he picked up my handgun. Don't, I said. He held it away from both of us, pointed at the concrete floor. I'm not going to shoot you. Calvin's voice hardened. Evan, you said no one else would get hurt. Martin made his own choice. He put a bullet in his chest. The warehouse went silent. Evan looked upward. You told me he killed himself. A shadow moved behind the high office window above us. Calvin had been watching from the old supervisor's room. The same room where Owen and I once kept payroll envelopes and spare keys. The steel door near the loading bay opened. Laura stepped out. Her hands were free, blood stained the sleeve of her robe. I moved toward her, but she raised one palm. I'm all right. Whose blood is that? Owen's. The floor seemed to drop beneath me. She pointed behind her. He's alive. Barely. I started toward the door. Calvin appeared on the metal stairs above us. He held a pistol in one hand and a thick file in the other. At 68, he did not look dangerous. That was part of what made him frightening. He looked like a retired banker who should have been trimming roses or complaining about property taxes. Put the gun down, Evan, he said. Evan raised my handgun toward him. Calvin smiled. You won't use it. Try me. Your wife is already speaking to the police. Evan's confidence broke. What? Calvin nodded toward me. Emily left Daniel less than 20 minutes ago. Did you really think she would choose you after seeing those messages? Evan looked at me. I gave him nothing. Calvin continued down the steps. Put the weapon on the floor, and perhaps you still get to explain yourself. You framed Daniel. You provided the access. You said the transfers would only delay the sale. And you believed me because you wanted to. Evan's hand began shaking. Calvin stopped halfway down the stairs. Daniel, you've been asking the wrong question. I looked at him. You want to know why Owen disappeared. You should be asking why he came back. The steel door behind Laura opened again. Owen stumbled into view. His face was pale. A bandage had been wrapped around his abdomen, already soaked through. He leaned against the door frame and looked directly at me. 20 years of friendship stood between us. So did forged signatures, hidden money, and a fire that built our lives. Danny, he said. Only Owen called me that. I wanted to cross the room and hold him up. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I asked the one question that had followed me since Monday morning. Did you steal the money? Owen gave a weak nod. I moved it. Where? Somewhere Calvin can't reach. Calvin raised his pistol. Owen did not look at him. The money was never the real target, he said. You were. Calvin's finger tightened against the trigger. Laura shouted. Evan swung my handgun upward, and Owen looked at me with tears in his eyes. Daniel, I'm sorry. I forged your name in 2006. The gunshot filled the warehouse. The bullet struck the railing beside Calvin's hand. His pistol flew from his grip, bounced down the metal stairs, and skidded across the concrete. Evan had fired first. For one stunned second, nobody moved. Then Calvin lunged after the fallen weapon. I kicked my handgun out of Evan's reach and threw myself toward the other pistol. My knee hit the floor hard enough to send pain through my hip, but my fingers closed around the barrel before Calvin reached the bottom step. He drove his shoe into my ribs. I rolled onto my back. Calvin raised his foot again. Laura grabbed the folding chair beside the table and swung it against his shoulder. He staggered. Evan tackled him from the side. The two men crashed into the table, scattering papers across the warehouse floor. Calvin was older, but desperation gave him strength. He struck Evan across the bruised jaw, then wrapped both hands around his throat. Stop, Laura screamed. I turned the pistol away from everyone and shouted, Calvin. He looked at me. The expression on his face was not fear, it was outrage. As though 20 years of secrets belonged to him, and we had no right to take them away. Move away from Evan, I said. You won't shoot me. Maybe not. A voice came from the darkness behind the west wall. But I will. Detective Ruiz stepped into the warehouse with her service weapon raised. 3 officers followed through the hidden service corridor. Calvin released Evan. The anger drained from his face, not all at once. Slowly, like water leaving a cracked basin, Ruiz ordered him onto the floor. He hesitated. Then Owen spoke from the doorway. It's over, Cal. Calvin turned toward him. You think this saves you? No. Owen pressed one hand against his bleeding side. I stopped trying to save myself a long time ago. The officers handcuffed Calvin. Evan sat against the wall, coughing and rubbing his throat. Ruiz took my handgun from the floor, then looked at me. Your daughter gave me the drive. I glanced at Laura. You called Emily? Laura nodded. Evan brought us here, but he left my phone behind because Calvin was tracking it. I borrowed Owen's when Calvin went upstairs. Owen gave a weak smile. He forgot I kept two. That was such an Owen thing to say that I nearly laughed. Instead, I caught him as his knees gave way. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Owen had been shot the previous night when he tried to escape Calvin at the rest area. The bullet passed through his side without striking a major organ, but he had lost enough blood to make every minute dangerous. As the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, he grabbed my sleeve. "The money," he whispered. "Where is it? Employee trust. What trust?" "Denise, how's the papers?" "Payroll clears Thursday. The rest goes back after the investigation. You used my credentials. I had to make Calvin believe the frame worked. You could have told me." His eyes closed for a moment. "No, Danny. I should have told you 20 years ago. They carried him away before I could answer." Calvin Rhodes was charged with Martin's murder within 48 hours. The police recovered Martin's blood from Calvin's coat and security footage showing Calvin entering the company parking lot before sunrise. My handgun had been taken from my home by Evan, but Calvin had used it to kill Martin, then placed it in the warehouse to complete the case against me. Martin had started panicking after Owen disappeared. He planned to confess. Calvin made sure he never had the chance. The $3,840,000 had not been stolen for Owen's benefit. He transferred it into an emergency trust created through an attorney in Cleveland. The trust guaranteed employee payroll, supplier obligations, and legal expenses if the company accounts were frozen. Owen knew they would be. He also knew Calvin would believe the vanished money made me look guilty. That bought Owen enough time to hide the evidence, not enough time to escape. The truth about 2006 came out piece by piece. Calvin had been the county fire investigator assigned to Bell Street. Walter Crane, the warehouse owner, was facing bankruptcy. Martin was Crane's young accountant. Together, they staged the fire to collect insurance money. Owen discovered evidence of accelerants behind the west wall. Calvin offered him $250,000 to keep quiet and certify the building as safe for restoration. Owen accepted. Then he forged my signature because I had refused to join him that night. That was the part I had forgotten, not because of medication or age. Because I had never been there. Owen had asked me to meet him at Bell Street on March 9. I stayed home after Ben developed a fever. The next morning, Owen showed up with the restoration contract and told me we had finally caught a break. The money funded our first truck, equipment, insurance, and payroll. I built my life on it without knowing where it came from. Owen carried that knowledge alone for 20 years. When Calvin joined North Star, he recognized an opportunity. The company sale would give him access to every archived report and insurance record Mercer and Price possessed. He wanted the old Bell Street documents destroyed during the transition. But Owen had kept copies. Calvin recruited Martin first. Evan came later. My son-in-law had discovered irregularities in the Lake County claim and went to Martin. Believing he had uncovered fraud committed by Owen and me, Martin convinced him Briar Ridge could protect Emily and the boys if North Star exposed us. Evan allowed himself to believe that because the alternative was admitting he was helping steal my company. That did not make him innocent. It only made his betrayal more human. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy, unauthorized computer access, and insurance fraud. His cooperation helped prosecutors convict Calvin, but he still went to prison. Emily divorced him before sentencing. She brought the boys to visit me every Sunday for months afterward. Caleb stopped asking when his father was coming home. That silence hurt more than the questions. Owen survived surgery. He confessed to forging my signature, falsifying the Bell Street report, obstructing an investigation, and moving company funds without authorization. The prosecutor considered his cooperation and the evidence he preserved. He served 18 months. I visited him once. We sat across from each other in a plain room with plastic chairs and a clock that ticked too loudly. He had lost weight. His hair had gone almost completely white. "I thought I could fix it before you knew," he said. "You had 20 years. I know. Why leave the note?" "Because the West Wall was where I made the worst decision of my life. I looked at the man who had stood beside me through weddings, funerals, births, debts, and storms. You also made it where I could find the truth. That doesn't forgive what I did." "No," he waited. I wanted to tell him everything was all right. It wasn't. Forgiveness is not pretending the damage never happened. Sometimes it is simply refusing to let the damage decide who you become. "I don't hate you," I said. His eyes filled. That was all I could give him then. Mercer and Price never sold to North Star. The investigation cost us contracts, clients, and nearly half the company's value. I considered closing the doors. Then 86 employees showed up on a Saturday morning. Foreman. Office staff, drivers, roofers, people who had heard the rumors and stayed anyway. They asked what they could do, so I told them the truth, all of it. 2 years later, we completed an employee ownership transition. I received less money than the North Star sale promised, but enough to retire without fear. More importantly, the people who had built the company owned it. Laura finally got her new kitchen. I got my porch. Owen was released the following spring. He did not return to Cedar Grove. The niece moved with him to a small town near Lake Erie. Every October, an envelope arrives without a return address. Inside is a photograph of the water and a handwritten sentence. No excuses, just proof that he remembers. I keep them in a drawer beside the first honest contract Mercer and Price ever signed. People sometimes ask whether I wish I had understood Owen's note sooner. I don't. The note was never a map to missing money. It was a warning about trust. The damage you see first is rarely the deepest damage. And when a life looks as though it has collapsed from the roof down, you should always check the west wall. If this story stayed with you, tap the next video on your screen for another story of betrayal, hidden truth, and justice. I'll meet you there.